We're all sitting around the big kitchen table. It was Saturday morning, pancake morning. Mom was squeezing oranges for juice. Henry and I were betting on how many pancakes we could eat these, and Grandpa was being with us. Seconds later, something flew through the air and headed right towards the kitchen ceiling. After we all realized it was just a pancake, we all laughed, even Grandpa. Breakfast continued quite uneventfully. All the other pancakes landed in the pan, and they were all eaten, even the one that landed on Henry. That night, touched off by the pancake incident at breakfast, Grandpa told us the best tall tale story he had ever told. Across an ocean, over lots of huge bumpy mountains, across 3 hot deserts and 1 smaller ocean, there lay the tiny town of Chew and Swallow. In most ways, it was very much like any other tiny town. It had a main street lined with stores, houses with trees and gardens around them, a schoolhouse, and about 300 people, and some assorted cats and dogs. But there were no food stores in the town of Chew and Swallow. They didn't need me. The sky supplied all the food they could possibly want. The only thing that was really different about Chew and Swallow was its weather. It came 3 times a day, at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Everything that everyone ate came from the sky. Whatever the weather served, that was what they ate. But it never rained rain, it never snowed snow, and it never blew just wind. It rained things like soup and juice, and it snowed mashed potatoes and green peas. Sometimes the wind blew in a storm of hamburgers. People could watch the weather report on television in the morning, and they could predict the next day's food. When the townspeople went outside, they carried their plates, cups, forks, knives, glasses, spoons, and napkins with them. That way, they would always be prepared for any kind of weather. If there were leftovers, and there usually were, the people took them home and put them in their refrigerator in case they got hungry between meals. The menu varied. By the time they woke up in the morning, breakfast was coming down. After a brief shower of orange juice, low clouds of sunny-side eggs moved in, followed by pieces of toast. Butter and jelly sprinkled down for the toast, and most of the time it rained milk afterwards. For lunch one day, frankfurters, already in their rolls, blew in from the northwest at about 5 miles an hour. There were mustard clouds nearby. The wind shifted to the east and brought in baked beans. A dribble of soda finished off the meal. Dinner one night consisted of lamb chops, becoming heavy at times, with occasional ketchup. Periods of peas and baked potatoes were followed by a gradual clearing, with the wonderful Jell-O setting in the west. The sanitation department of Chew and Swallow had a rather unusual job for a sanitation department. It had to remove the food that fell on the houses and sidewalks and lawns. The workers cleared things up after every meal and fed all the cats and dogs. Then they emptied some of it into the surrounding oceans for the fish, turtles, and whales to eat. The rest of the food was put back into the earth so that the soil would be richer for the people's flower gardens. Life for the townspeople was delicious until everything took a turn for the worse. One day there was nothing but gorgonzola cheese all day long. The next there was only broccoli, all overcooked. And the next day there were Brussels sprouts and peanut butter with mayonnaise. One day there was a pea soup fog. No one could see where they were going, and they could barely find the rest of the meal that got lost in the fog. The food was getting larger and larger. And so were the portions. The people were getting frightened. Violent storms blew up frequently. Awful things were happening. One Tuesday there was a hurricane of bread and rolls all day long into the night. There were soft rolls and there were hard rolls. Some with seeds and some without. There was white bread and rye bread and whole wheat toast. Most of it was larger than they had ever seen before. It was a terrible day. Everyone had to stay indoors. The roofs were damaged, and the sanitation department was beside itself. The mess took the workers 4 days to clean up, and the sea was full of floating rolls. To help out, the people piled up as much bread as they could in their backyards. The birds pecked at it a bit, but it just got staler and staler. There was a storm of pancakes one morning, followed by a downpour of maple syrup that nearly flooded the town. A huge pancake covered the school. No one could get it off because it was late, so they had to close the school. Lunch one day brought in 15-inch strips of cream cheese and jelly sandwiches. Everyone ate themselves sick, and the day ended in a stomach ache. There was an awful salt and pepper wind accompanied by an even worse tomato tornado. People were sneezing themselves silly and running to avoid tomatoes. The town was a mess. There was pulp and seeds everywhere. The sanitation department gave up. The job was too big. Everyone feared for their lives. They couldn't go outside most of the time. Many houses had been badly damaged. and the stores were boarded up, and there was no more school for the children. So a decision was made to abandon the town of Chew and Swallow. It was a matter of survival. The people glued together giant pieces of stale bread, sandwich style, with peanut butter, took the absolute necessities with them, and set sail on their rafts for a new land. After being afloat for a week, they finally reached the small coastal town which welcomed them. The bread had held up surprisingly well enough for them to build new temporary houses for themselves. The children began school again, and the adults tried to find places for themselves in the new land. The biggest thing they had to get used to was buying food from a supermarket. They found it odd that food was kept in shelves, packaged in boxes, cans, and bottles. Meat that had to be cooked was kept in refrigerators. Nothing came down from the sky except for rain and snow. The clouds above their head were not made of fried eggs. No one ever got hit by a hamburger again. And nobody dared to go back to Chew and Swallow to find out what had happened to it. They were too afraid. Henry and I were awake till the end of Grandpa's story. I remember his goodnight kiss. The next morning, we woke up to see snow falling outside our window. We ran downstairs for breakfast and ate a little faster than usual so we could go sledding with Grandpa. It was funny, but even as we were sliding down the hill, we could swear we saw a huge pat of butter, and we almost smelled mashed potatoes.